The mining ship Times, Terraform Times, had been drifting through the Kepler sector for 3 weeks when engineer Marcus Chen detected the strange energy readings. Most of his crewmates dismissed it as another asteroid field with unusual mineral deposits, but Marcus knew better. After 15 years working the outer rim, he had learned to trust his instincts. "Captain Rodriguez, I'm picking up something different on long-range scanners," Marcus called from his station on the bridge. "It's not showing up as standard rock formations." Captain Rodriguez, a weathered woman in her 50s, walked over to examine the readings. "What are you thinking, Chen? Could be a derelict ship. The energy signature is too organized to be natural." Marcus adjusted the scanner frequency, trying to get a clearer picture. "Whatever it is, it's big, maybe twice the size of our ship." The captain studied the data for a moment. "Set course for investigation. If it's salvageable tech, the company will want to know about it." As the Times Terraform Times approached the object, it became clear this was no human vessel. The ship was massive, with smooth, organic curves that seemed to flow like frozen water. Its surface was a deep emerald green that shifted to silver in the starlight. Strange symbols covered the hull in patterns that hurt to look at directly. "I've never seen anything like this," whispered Dr. Sarah Kim, the ship's xenobiologist. "The design doesn't match any known alien architecture in our databases." Marcus felt a chill run down his spine. First contact protocols were clear, but they were just a mining crew, not a military vessel. Still, the ship appeared dead in space, with no response to their communication attempts. "Life signs?" asked Captain Rodriguez. "Doctor." Kim checked her sensors. "Faint readings. Very faint. If there's anyone alive in there, they're barely hanging on." The captain made her decision. "Chen, Kim, Torres, you're with me on the boarding party. Everyone else, maintain safe distance and monitor our signals." The airlock of the alien ship cycled with surprising efficiency, suggesting the vessel still had some power. The interior was vast and dimly lit, with corridors that seemed designed for beings much larger than humans. The walls pulsed with a soft, rhythmic glow, like a heartbeat. "The air is breathable," Dr. Kim reported, checking her instruments. "High oxygen content. Actually, temperature is warm, maybe 30 degrees Celsius." They moved carefully through the corridors, following the life sign readings deeper into the ship. Marcus noticed that the walls were covered in the same flowing script they had seen outside. But here the symbols seemed to move slightly when he wasn't looking directly at them. The life signs led them to what appeared to be a nursery or medical bay. Soft light emanated from crystalline formations in the walls, casting everything in a gentle blue glow. In the center of the room were 2 large egg-like pods, each about the size of a human torso. The pods were cracked and leaking a clear, viscous fluid. "My God," breathed Dr. Kim. "I think these are incubation chambers." As they approached, Marcus heard something that made his heart skip. A soft, mewling cry, like a kitten in distress. The sound came from inside one of the cracked pods. "There's something alive in there," he said, kneeling beside the pod. Through the crack, he could see movement, and caught a glimpse of something small and scaled. Captain Rodriguez activated her communicator. "This is a first contact situation. We need to document everything carefully." But Marcus was already acting on instinct. The cries from inside the pods were getting weaker. Whatever was in there, it was dying. He carefully widened the crack in the first pod, and a small creature tumbled out into his hands. It was no bigger than a house cat, but it was definitely a dragon. Its scales were deep red, with gold highlights along the edges. It had tiny wings that were still wet and folded against its body, and its eyes were the most brilliant green Marcus had ever seen. The little creature looked up at him and made a sound that was part purr, part chirp. "Incredible," whispered Dr. Kim. "It's definitely reptilian, but the bone structure suggests it might actually be capable of flight when mature." The second pod was also cracking. Marcus gently helped the second baby dragon emerge. This one was smaller, with blue scales that shifted to purple in the light. Its eyes were golden, and it immediately pressed against its red sibling, both of them shivering despite the warm air. "They're cold," Marcus said, instinctively gathering both creatures against his chest. His body heat seemed to comfort them, and their shivering stopped. "Chen, we need to follow protocol here," Captain Rodriguez said, though her voice was gentle. "These are alien life forms. We don't know if they're dangerous or if they carry diseases." "Look at them, Captain," Marcus replied softly. "They're babies, they're scared and alone, and their ship is dying." The little dragons had calmed down completely in his arms, and the red one was making a soft humming sound. "Doctor," Kim ran her scanner over the creatures. "No immediately dangerous pathogens that I can detect, but Marcus is right. They're in distress. Their body temperature is too low, and they're showing signs of dehydration." They spent the next hour exploring the ship, trying to find any adult dragons or clues about what had happened. The ship's computer systems were unlike anything they had seen, based on some kind of biological interface that none of them could operate. What they did find painted a grim picture. Scorch marks along the corridors suggested a battle. Several areas of the ship were sealed off, probably due to hull breaches. In what appeared to be the bridge, they found the remains of several large, dragon-like beings, their bodies mummified by the vacuum of space. "I think this was a refugee ship," Dr. Kim concluded. "These markings suggest they were fleeing from something. The adult dragons probably died protecting the young. Marcus had been carrying the baby dragons the entire time, and they had not left his side. When Dr. Kim tried to take the blue one to examine it more closely, both creatures cried out in distress until they were returned to Marcus. "They've imprinted on you," she observed. "In many species, the first thing a hatchling sees becomes their parent figure." Back on the Times Terraform Asterisk, the crew gathered to discuss what to do next. The dragon ship was too damaged to repair, and its systems were incompatible with human technology. The baby dragons, however, were thriving under Marcus's care. "Company policy is clear," said First Officer Martinez. "All alien life forms are to be turned over to the Scientific Council for study." "These aren't specimens," Marcus said firmly. "They're children who just lost their entire family." The baby dragons had not left Marcus's side since the rescue. They rode on his shoulders as he worked, slept curled up against him at night, and followed him everywhere he went. The red one, which the crew had started calling Crimson, was bold and curious, always exploring new things. The blue one, nicknamed Azure, was more cautious and rarely strayed far from Marcus. Dr. Kim had been studying them extensively and was amazed by their rapid development. "Their neural pathways are developing at an incredible rate. I think they might be more intelligent than we initially thought. They're already starting to understand simple human words." It was true. When Marcus said food, both dragons would perk up and follow him to the galley. When he said sleep, they would curl up in their makeshift nest in his quarters. They seemed to understand his moods too, becoming playful when he was happy and quiet, and comforting when he was tired or stressed. The crew was divided about what to do. Some, like Martinez, insisted on following company protocol. Others, like Dr. Kim, were fascinated by the opportunity to study such intelligent alien life. But Marcus had made up his mind. "I'm not turning them over to be experimented on," he told Captain Rodriguez privately. "They trust me. I can't betray that." The captain studied him carefully. "Chen, you know what this means for your career. The company won't overlook something like this." "Then I'll quit," Marcus said simply. "I've got enough saved up to retire to one of the frontier worlds. Somewhere they can grow up free." Captain Rodriguez was quiet for a long moment. She watched through the observation window as Marcus played with the young dragons in the rec room. Crimson was trying to fly, managing to glide a few feet before landing in Marcus's arms. Azure was more interested in the puzzle Marcus had made for them, using his engineering skills to create something that challenged their rapidly developing minds. "You know, Chen," she said finally, "there's been a lot of equipment failures this trip. Life support has been particularly unreliable. We might have to drop out of hyperspace early for emergency repairs." Marcus looked at her with growing understanding. "If we happen to stop near the Kepler 7 colony," she continued, And if someone happened to take a shuttle for supplies and never came back, well, these things happen in space. Equipment fails. People disappear. Can't be helped. The next day, the Times Terraform Times experienced a sudden life support failure and was forced to drop out of hyperspace near Kepler-7, a remote frontier world known for asking few questions about new settlers. Marcus took a maintenance shuttle to the surface to purchase emergency supplies. He never returned. The official report stated that engineer Marcus Chen was lost in a shuttle malfunction during a supply run. The alien ship was reported as containing only archaeological artifacts. No mention was made of any living beings. On Kepler-7, Marcus used his savings to buy a small plot of land in the wilderness, far from the main settlement. It was perfect. Wide open spaces for young dragons to learn to fly, and no nosy neighbors to ask uncomfortable questions. As he watched Crimson and Azure explore their new home, their scales shimmering in the twin suns of Kepler-7, Marcus knew he had made the right choice. They were growing so fast, and their intelligence was becoming more apparent every day. Soon, they would probably be smarter than he was, but for now, they were still his babies, and he was their dad. And that was all that mattered. 3 years had passed since Marcus Chen had settled on Kepler-7 with his unusual family. The remote cabin he had built in the foothills of the Crystal Mountains was perfect for 2 growing dragons who needed space to learn their natural abilities. Crimson was now the size of a large dog, his red and gold scales gleaming like polished metal in the sunlight. He had mastered flight 2 years ago and loved to soar through the mountain valleys, always returning to Marcus with treasures he had found, interesting rocks, rare flowers, or occasionally small animals he was proud to have caught. Azure had grown more slowly but was clearly the more intelligent of the two. Her blue-purple scales shifted color based on her mood, and she had developed an almost supernatural ability to understand human technology. She could operate Marcus's computer, had learned to read basic standard, and could even help with repairs around the homestead. Marcus had aged more in the past 3 years than in the previous 10. The isolation was harder than he had expected, and the responsibility of raising 2 highly intelligent alien beings was exhausting, but he had never regretted his decision. Especially when he watched Crimson teaching Azure new flying maneuvers, or when Azure would curl up next to him in the evenings while he read, her scales warm against his side. The dragons had developed their own language of chirps, growls, and musical tones that they used to communicate with each other. But with Marcus, they preferred to speak in the human words they had learned, though their pronunciation was still developing. "Dad tired today," Azure observed one morning, her golden eyes studying Marcus's face with concern. At 3 years old, she was already more perceptive than many adult humans. "Just didn't sleep well," Marcus assured her. Though he was worried, his supply runs to the settlement were becoming more frequent, and people were starting to ask questions. The official story was that he was a hermit who prospected for rare minerals in the mountains. But maintaining that cover was getting more difficult. Crimson bounded through the door, his wings folded against his body. "Storm coming, Dad. Big one." His voice was deeper than Azure's, with a slight rumble that vibrated in his chest. Marcus checked his weather instruments. The readings showed a massive electrical storm approaching from the west, the kind that could ground ships for days and knock out communication systems. On most worlds, this would be a minor inconvenience. On Kepler-7, with its unstable atmosphere, it could be deadly. "We need to secure everything," Marcus said, moving into action. "Azure, shut down all the electronics and make sure the backup power cells are charged. Crimson, help me get the solar panels inside." The dragons moved with practiced efficiency. They had weathered storms before, but nothing like what was approaching. As the wind began to howl through the mountains, Marcus felt a chill that had nothing to do with the cold air. The storm hit just after sunset, with a fury that surprised even Marcus, who had lived through his share of bad weather. Lightning crashed continuously, turning night into a strobing, electric day. The wind was so strong that it threatened to tear the roof off their cabin. Azure pressed close to Marcus, her scales dark with worry. "Never seen storm like this, Dad." Crimson was pacing restlessly, his protective instincts on high alert. Something wrong. Storm not natural. Marcus was beginning to think the same thing. The lightning was too regular, too focused, and underneath the thunder, he could swear he heard something else. A deep, rhythmic humming that seemed to come from the sky itself. Then the power grid failed across the entire region, plunging them into darkness except for the constant lightning. Marcus activated their emergency lighting just as his long-range communicator crackled to life. "This is colonial security to all residents. Unknown vessels have entered the system. Take shelter immediately and await further instructions." This is not a drill. Marcus's blood ran cold. In 3 years, no one had come looking for him or the dragons. He had started to hope that maybe they were safe, that they could live out their lives in peace. But now, "Ships in sky," Crimson said, his voice low and dangerous. "Smell them. Metal and weapons." Azure was already at the computer, her claws dancing over the controls with impossible speed. "Scanning radio frequencies. Dad. Multiple ships. Military configuration. They're looking for something." The humming grew louder. And through the storm, Marcus could see lights moving in the sky. Not the random flash of lightning, but the purposeful illumination of search beams sweeping across the landscape. "They're scanning for energy signatures," Marcus realized. "Looking for technology that doesn't belong." Azure's scales shifted to a deep, worried purple. "Looking for us?" Marcus didn't answer, but they all knew the truth. Somehow, someone had figured out that the dragons hadn't died with their ship. Maybe the company had reviewed the Terraform's times records more carefully. Maybe Dr. Kim had let something slip. It didn't matter how. What mattered was that they were here. "We need to move," Marcus said, already gathering their emergency supplies. "The cave system in the northern ridge. We can hide there until they leave." But Crimson was standing at the window, his body tense with growing anger. "No more running, Dad. Tired of hiding." "Crimson, they have weapons that could." "They hurt Dad. They hurt family," the red dragon said simply. His scales were beginning to glow with an inner fire that Marcus had never seen before. "Dragons protect family." Azure moved to stand beside her brother, her smaller frame still radiating determination. "Crimson right, Dad. You save us. Now we save you." Marcus felt his throat tighten. These weren't the helpless babies he had rescued anymore. They were becoming something magnificent and powerful. And they were willing to fight for him, just as he had fought for them. But he couldn't let them take that risk. The searchlights were getting closer, and Marcus could hear the whine of aircraft engines over the storm. Multiple ships, moving in a coordinated search pattern. Professional, military, thorough. "Listen to me," Marcus said urgently, kneeling down so he was at eye level with both dragons. "You are the last of your species, as far as we know. You're more important than one old human. If something happens to me..." "No," Azure said firmly, her voice carrying a harmonic quality that made the words ring with finality. "You are our dad. Dragons choose their family. We choose you." Crimson nodded, his inner fire growing brighter. "Besides, Dad teach us much. Now time to teach them what happens when someone threatens our family." The search beam swept over their cabin, bathing everything in harsh white light. Marcus could see the angular silhouette of a military dropship hovering just outside, its weapons systems clearly visible. A amplified voice boomed over the storm. "Marcus Chen, you are ordered to surrender yourself and any alien life forms in your possession. You have 60 seconds to comply." Marcus stood slowly, his hands shaking but his voice steady. "Stay behind me. Whatever happens, stay behind me." But Azure was already moving past him, her scales shifting to a brilliant silver white. "Dad taught us right from wrong," she called out toward the ship. "Taught us that family protects family. What did they teach you?" Crimson joined her, his red scales now blazing like molten metal. Together, the two dragons began to sing, a deep, harmonic sound that seemed to resonate in Marcus's bones. The storm around them began to change. the wild lightning starting to move in patterns, as if responding to their call. Marcus stared in amazement. He had known the dragons were intelligent, had suspected they might have abilities beyond what he understood. But this was beyond anything he had imagined. The military ship's engines sputtered, and its searchlight flickered. The electromagnetic field, generated by the dragon's song, was interfering with the ship's systems. Other voices could be heard over the radio. Confused reports from the other search vessels as their instruments began to malfunction. "Dad," Azure said softly, never stopping her song. "Dragons are not just animals. We are what is human word? Symbiotic. We bond with other species, share our abilities. You share your heart with us, we share our power with you." Marcus felt something flowing through him, a warmth that spread from his chest to his fingertips. When he looked at his hands, he could see they were glowing with the same inner light as the dragon's scales. He could feel their emotions, their fierce, protective love, their absolute determination to keep their family safe. And he could feel something else, their memories, stretching back through generations of their species. Dragons who had bonded with other beings across the galaxy. Dragons who had shared their gifts with those they chose to love. Dragons who had died fighting to protect their adopted families from those who would exploit or destroy them. The ship outside was struggling to maintain altitude as more of its systems failed. Marcus could hear the pilot reporting to his command ship, his voice tight with confusion and fear. "This is Alpha Team. We're experiencing total system failure. The electromagnetic interference is off the charts. Recommend immediate withdrawal." "We can see," but another voice answered, cold and determined. "Negative. Alpha Team. Capture of the specimens is top priority. Use backup systems and proceed with extraction." And Marcus felt a surge of anger flow through the bond he shared with the dragons. These people weren't here to study or understand. They were here to take his family away, to lock them up and treat them like laboratory animals. "Not happening," he said quietly. And for the first time in his life, Marcus Chen felt truly powerful. The storm above them intensified, but now it was no longer chaotic. Lightning danced between Marcus's fingers as Azure's song grew stronger. Crimson's inner fire spread outward, creating a protective dome of energy around their cabin. The military ships found themselves caught in an electromagnetic maelstrom that they had no hope of understanding or defeating. One by one, the search vessels were forced to retreat, their systems failing, their weapons useless against a phenomenon their science couldn't explain. As the last ship disappeared into the storm, Marcus felt the power drain out of him, leaving him exhausted but exhilarated. The dragon's song faded to a gentle hum, and their scales returned to their normal colors. "They'll be back," he said. Though he was smiling, Azure nuzzled against his hand. "Let them come, Dad. Now they know. Dragons choose their family. And family protects family." Crimson curled his tail around Marcus's waist in a gesture of affection and protection. "Besides, storm will last 3 days. Time to prepare. Time to show them what dragons and their dad can do when they work together." As Marcus looked out at the retreating lights of the military ships, he realized that everything had changed. They weren't hiding anymore. They weren't running. They were a family, and they were home. And anyone who wanted to threaten that family would have to go through all of them. The 3 days following the electromagnetic storm were the most peaceful Marcus had experienced in months. The dragons had used their combined abilities to create a shield around their mountain home that made them invisible to most scanning equipment. For the first time since the military ships had arrived, they could move freely without fear of discovery. But Marcus knew this was only temporary. The forces hunting them wouldn't give up easily. And eventually, they would find a way through the dragon's defenses. "Dad worried again," Azure observed as she helped Marcus organize their supplies. At nearly 4 years old, her intelligence continued to amaze him. She had taught herself to read technical manuals, and could now perform repairs on their equipment that Marcus himself couldn't manage. "Just thinking ahead," Marcus replied, checking the charge on their emergency communicator. "They'll be back, probably with better equipment." Crimson landed outside their cabin with a thunderous beat of his wings. He was now nearly the size of a small aircraft, his red and gold scales magnificent in the afternoon sunlight. Ships moving in orbit, Dad, he reported. Different ships. Bigger. Azure's scales shifted to a worried blue. She had been monitoring radio transmissions and had picked up fragmentary communications that painted a grim picture. They call us Class A. Xenological specimens, she said quietly. Say we are too valuable to lose. Marcus felt the familiar surge of protective anger. You're not specimens. You're my children. It was true, and all three of them knew it. The bond they shared went far beyond the original imprinting. Through their psychic connection, Marcus had experienced fragments of dragon racial memory, while the dragons had absorbed human concepts of family, loyalty, and love that were foreign to their original culture. Dad, Crimson said seriously, settling his massive bulk carefully on the ground. Azure and I been talking. Been thinking about what you show us. About choices. Thanks for watching. Marcus waited, sensing that something important was coming. Azure moved to stand beside her larger brother. Dragons before us, they bond with one person, one family. But you teach us different way. You teach us that family can grow, that love can spread. Claude, what are you saying? Marcus asked, though he was beginning to understand. Humans in ships up there, Crimson said, his deep voice rumbling with emotion. They scared. They not understand us. They think we dangerous because they not know us. Azure nodded. You teach us that fear comes from not knowing. That best way to fight fear is with truth. Marcus stared at them both, feeling a mixture of pride and terror. You want to reveal yourselves. Officially. Want to do what you did? Azure said simply. When you find us, you could have followed rules, could have turned us over to be studied. But you choose to save us instead. Now we choose to save them. Save them from what? Marcus asked. Crimson's expression grew grave. From making terrible mistake. From destroying something beautiful, because they too afraid to understand it. Over the next hour, the dragons explained their plan. Through their psychic abilities, they had been observing the military forces in orbit. What they had discovered was troubling. The expedition wasn't just about capturing two alien creatures, it was about determining whether dragons posed a threat to human space. They find our ship eventually, Azure explained, her claws dancing over Marcus's computer keyboard as she pulled up data she had gathered. When they study it, they learn that dragons are old species, very old. They see our technology and think we might be enemy. But that's not true, Marcus protested. Your people were refugees. They were running from something. Truth not matter if humans too scared to listen, Crimson said sadly. Fear make people do terrible things. Make them hurt first. Ask questions later. Marcus realized what the dragons were really afraid of. If humanity decided that dragons were a threat, they would hunt down every dragon ship they could find. What had happened to Azure and Crimson's family would happen to others. So, you want to make first contact, he said. Show them that dragons can be allies instead of enemies. Show them what you show us, Azure corrected. That love's stronger than fear. That family can be chosen, not just born. The plan they had developed was typically draconic in its boldness and typically human in its compassion. Instead of hiding or fighting, they would approach the human ships openly, offering to negotiate. Marcus would speak for them, using his status as a human to bridge the gap between the species. It's incredibly dangerous, Marcus warned them. They might shoot first and ask questions later. All important things are dangerous, Dad, Crimson replied. You teach us that too. 2 days later, Marcus found himself in the passenger compartment of an improvised shuttle that Azure had built by combining dragon technology with human engineering. The craft was unlike anything in either species' fleet. Organic curves merged with geometric precision, creating something that was both beautiful and functional. Crimson flew alongside them, his massive wings easily keeping pace with the shuttle's engines. Through their psychic link, Marcus could feel both dragons' mixture of excitement and nervousness. Fleet approaching, Azure reported from the pilot's seat. 12 ships, military configuration. But they broadcasting diplomatic frequencies now. Marcus had sent a message to the fleet commander 2 hours earlier, requesting a meeting. The response had been cautious but not hostile, which was more than he had dared hope for. "Unknown vessel, this is Admiral Hayes aboard the CNS Wellington," came a crisp voice over the radio. "You are requesting permission to dock?" Marcus took a deep breath. "Admiral, this is Marcus Chen. I'm accompanied by 2 representatives of the dragon species who wish to discuss peaceful relations with humanity." There was a long silence. Then, "Mr. Chen, our records show you are wanted for theft of alien specimens. Are you attempting to surrender yourself and the creatures in your custody?" Azure's scales flickered with annoyance at being called a creature, but she kept flying steady. Marcus chose his words carefully. "Admiral, with respect, I'm here to prevent what could become a tragic misunderstanding between our species. The beings with me aren't specimens or prisoners. They're sapient individuals who wish to speak for their people." Another pause. Marcus could imagine the furious discussions happening on the flagship's bridge. "Very well, Mr. Chen. You may dock in Bay 7. Be advised that we will have security personnel standing by." The docking was smooth, thanks to Azure's piloting skills. As they settled into the bay, Marcus could see heavily armed Marines taking position around the shuttle. More concerning were the scientists setting up scanning equipment, clearly preparing to study whatever emerged from the craft. "Remember," Marcus said quietly to his companions, "they're scared. Don't make any sudden movements." Crimson's response rumbled through their psychic link, rather than being spoken aloud. "We know, Dad. You taught us well." The shuttle's ramp lowered, and Marcus stepped out first, his hands clearly visible and empty. Behind him came Azure, walking upright on her hind legs in a gesture that was unmistakably intelligent and dignified. Crimson followed, having to duck slightly to fit through the shuttle's doorway. The Marines' weapons didn't exactly point at them, but they shifted nervously. Marcus could smell the fierce sweat of the humans around them. And through his bond with the dragons, he knew they could sense it too. Admiral Hayes was a tall, stern-looking woman in her 60s, with gray hair and intelligent eyes. She approached cautiously, flanked by what appeared to be her senior staff. "Mr. Chen," she said formally, "you've led us quite a chase." "Admiral," Marcus replied with equal formality. "May I present Azure and Crimson of the dragon species? They've asked me to speak for them because they believe humans and dragons have much to offer each other." Azure stepped forward with fluid grace, her blue scales shifting to a peaceful silver. "Admiral Hayes," she said, her voice clear and precise despite the slight accent of her non-human vocal cords. "We thank you for this opportunity to speak." Several of the Marines took a step back. One of the scientists dropped his scanning device. Marcus could see the shock on their faces. They had expected animals, not people. You can speak," Admiral Hayes said, clearly struggling to adjust her expectations. "We speak many languages," Crimson rumbled, his deep voice carrying easily across the shuttle bay. "We learn quickly. Marcus' dad teach us human words, human concepts. We teach him dragon ways in return." "Marcus' dad?" one of the officers whispered, Azure's golden eyes fixed on Admiral Hayes. "Human named Marcus Chen find us when we are very young, very scared. Our family dead, our ship dying. He save us when he could have left us. He raise us when he could have sold us. He love us when he could have feared us. That's not how our reports describe the situation," Admiral Hayes said slowly. Marcus stepped forward. "Admiral, the reports describe me as stealing alien specimens. But look at them. Do they look like prisoners to you?" It was a fair question. Azure and Crimson stood with the confident posture of beings who had chosen to be there. Their scales showed no signs of stress. Their movements were relaxed. And most tellingly, they positioned themselves protectively around Marcus, rather than cowering behind him. "Our species has long history," Crimson continued. "We bond with others, share our abilities, learn from them. Dragons who bond with good people become better dragons. Marcus, make us better. And they made me better too," Marcus added quietly. "They taught me what it means to be truly family." Not blood family, but chosen family. They taught me that love isn't about species or appearance. It's about choosing to protect and care for someone, even when it's hard. Dr. Sarah Kim stepped out from behind the Admiral, and Marcus felt a jolt of recognition. Marcus? I thought. We thought you died in that shuttle accident. Sarah, Marcus said with genuine warmth. No, I made it out fine. Been taking care of these two ever since. Dr. Kim approached cautiously, her scientific curiosity overriding her caution. The development is remarkable. Our models suggested they might achieve basic communication, but this level of linguistic sophistication. We also fix machines, Azure said helpfully. Learn very fast. Watch. Before anyone could stop her, Azure moved to a maintenance panel that was clearly malfunctioning. Marcus could see the error lights blinking from across the bay. With quick, precise movements of her claws, she opened the panel and began adjusting the internal components. Hey, wait! One of the technicians started to say. But the error lights went out, and the panel chimed to indicate normal operation. Azure looked back at Dr. Kim. Your power coupling was misaligned by 3.7 degrees. Simple fix. The silence in the shuttle bay was deafening. Admiral Hayes found her voice first. You understand our technology? We understand many things, Crimson said proudly. Marcus teach us curiosity. We learn human engineering, human science. But we also remember dragon knowledge. Together, we make new things, better things. He gestured toward their shuttle. Ship we come in use both ways of thinking. Dragon materials that heal themselves. Human computers that think logically. Combined. Very powerful. Dr. Kim was practically vibrating with excitement. The possibilities for technological exchange. The advances we could make. But only if built on friendship, Azure said firmly. Not on one species taking from another, on working together, choosing to share. Admiral Hayes looked around the shuttle bay, taking in the faces of her crew. Marcus could see the moment when her perspective shifted, when she stopped seeing dangerous aliens and started seeing potential allies. Mr. Chen, she said finally. You've put us in a very difficult position. Technically, you're still under arrest for theft of government property. Admiral, Marcus replied calmly, I think your legal department might have trouble proving ownership of sapient beings. Azure stepped forward again. Admiral Hayes, we wish to make formal proposal. Dragons who survive. We are scattered across galaxy. Hiding. Afraid. Humans expanding into space, also searching for friends. For allies. Perhaps we help each other. What kind of help? The Admiral asked carefully. Dragons know many worlds, many trade routes, Crimson explained. Know which systems safe, which dangerous. Know species that are friends, species that are enemies. Dragons live long time, remember much history. And humans, Azure added. Humans have thing dragons lost long ago. Humans have hope, have courage to choose love over fear, even when it's dangerous. Marcus, show us this. Maybe other humans capable of same wisdom. Admiral Hayes was quiet for a long moment, clearly weighing the implications. Finally, she spoke. I'll need to consult with Earth Command, but I think we can work something out. Mr. Chen, you'll need to remain available for debriefing, but I don't think we'll be pressing charges. Marcus felt a weight lift off his shoulders that he hadn't even realized he was carrying. Thank you, Admiral. Don't thank me yet, she warned. There will be protocols to establish, treaties to negotiate, a whole diplomatic framework to create. And not everyone is going to be as open-minded about this as I am. We understand, Azure said serenely. Change is slow process. But Marcus teach us patience too. We wait. We prove ourselves through actions, not just words. 6 months later, Marcus stood in the garden behind his new home on the human colony world of New Geneva. It was larger than his cabin on Kepler 7, with space for a growing family and regular visitors. Crimson was teaching a group of human children how to identify edible plants, his massive form surprisingly gentle as he guided tiny hands. Azure was inside, working with Dr. Kim and a team of scientists on a project to merge human and dragon technologies for peaceful exploration. The Dragon-Human Cooperation Treaty had been signed 3 weeks earlier, after months of negotiations. Marcus had served as an unofficial ambassador, helping both species understand each other. It hadn't been easy. There were factions on both sides who opposed cooperation, but slowly, carefully, trust was being built. "Dad," Azure called from the house. "The council is ready for your report." Marcus smiled. The Interspecies Council was something new in human politics, a joint body of humans and dragons working together to explore the galaxy safely. As someone who had direct experience with both species, Marcus had been asked to serve as an advisor. It was important work, but it wasn't what made him proudest. What made him proudest was watching Crimson patiently answer a young girl's questions about dragon scales, or seeing Azure's excitement when she solved a complex engineering problem by combining human logic with dragon intuition. They had saved each other, all 3 of them. 2 scared dragon hatchlings had found a father, and 1 lonely human had found a family that had grown to encompass 2 worlds. As he walked toward the house, Marcus reflected on how much had changed since that day on the mining ship, when he had first heard the crying of baby dragons. He had made a choice then to prioritize compassion over protocol, love over rules. It had turned out to be the most important choice he had ever made, not just for himself and his family, but for the future of both their species. Behind him, Crimson's deep laugh rumbled as one of the children tried to climb onto his back. Inside the house, Azure's voice could be heard explaining some complex concept with infinite patience. Home, Marcus thought. This was what home sounded like. Family taking care of family. Teaching and learning and growing together. It was exactly what he had always hoped it would be.